Morning, everybody. Sorry if you've seen me pop up and disappear and pop up and disappear. I was having some troubles with getting my phone to orientate properly. I'm going to do that actually. I need to tidy up my bookshelves a bit more for everybody. Yeah, there we go. So it's Pentecost today, and normally it would be a big festival in churches and at St Thomas's. Sometimes we hang up our Pentecost banners if we can manage to do that for it, to think about what it means to be Pentecost. There's quite a long Pentecost reading for today, which is from Acts 2, and I'm going to read some of that to you to begin with today. So this is the beginning of Acts 2. When the day of Pentecost came, they were all together in one place. Suddenly, a sound like the blowing of a violent wind came from heaven and filled the whole house where they were sitting. They saw what seemed to be tongues of fire that separated and came to rest on each of them. All of them were filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak in other tongues as the Spirit enabled them. Now there were staying in Jerusalem God-fearing Jews from every nation under heaven. When they heard this sound, a crowd came together in bewilderment, because each one heard their own language being spoken. Utterly amazed, they asked, "Are all these who are speaking Galileans? This is how that each of us hears them in our own native language. Parthians, Medes and Elamites, residents of Mesopotamia, Judea and Cappadocia, Pontus and Asia, Phrygia and Pamphylia, Egypt and the parts of Libya near Cyrene, visitors from Rome, both Jews and converts to Judaism, Cretans and Arabs, we hear them declaring the wonders of God in our own tongues." Amazed and perplexed, they asked one another, "What does this mean?" Some, however, made fun of them and said, "They have had too much wine." Then Peter stood up with the 11, raised his voice and addressed the crowd. "Fellow Jews and all of you who live in Jerusalem, let me explain this to you. Listen carefully to what I say. These people are not drunk, as you suppose. It's only 9 a.m. No, this is what was spoken by the prophet Joel. In the last days, God says, I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your young men will see visions. Your old men will dream dreams. Even on my servants, both men and women, I will pour out my spirit in those days, and they will prophesy. I will show wonders in the heavens above and signs on the earth below, blood and fire and billows of smoke. The sun will be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the coming of the great and glorious day of the Lord, and everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved." So that's the Acts reading for today, talking about Pentecost. And the first thing I want to say is that if you would like to see my little talk about Pentecost and the Tower of Babel and language, then that's on Facebook Live on the 29th of April, or it's on the YouTube channel. It says Pentecost 29th of April, so you can look there. But when I was praying and working out what to say today on Pentecost, it was this verse 17, that really stuck out to me. And it was like, in the last days, God says, I will pour out on my spirit on all my people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy, and young men will see visions, and your old men will dream dreams. During lockdown, it's been suggested that more people are having more dreams, longer dreams, and more vivid dreams, because we're sleeping a little bit longer than we might otherwise be. I mean, some of us are really busy, but for those who are less busy, then this dreaming has become a phenomenon. And when I was thinking about these last few months, how we've all been since March 23rd, 24th, 25th, that sort of time, that last week in March, things seemed to change a lot, and it was really for the better. I mean, there were all sorts of things going on. People were putting onto Facebook, "Oh, I've got some flour, does anyone need some?" Or, "I'm going shopping, do you want me to get something?" Or, I've got some yeast, I know some people are short." There was a lot of sharing going on. There were a lot of things that weren't happening anymore, so we weren't travelling. We weren't flying, and Greta Thunberg said everyone has to stop flying, and all of a sudden everybody has stopped flying. And whilst there was a lot of ordering things off the internet, generally people were buying less stuff. There was less consumerism at the beginning and more a sense of everybody pulling together. You think about how the Clap for Carers started, the rainbows, the kind of things like that. People were coming together. But now things seem more fractious. And one of the real key things for this is people choosing about whether or not they're going to send their children back to school. And this has caused division. Different people have made different choices, and other people are really upset about the choices that other people are making and really judgmental about that. Not being able to see one side or the other. There's tensions. There's all sorts of things which are going on here. And of course, internationally, things are quite difficult, and there's all sorts of awful things going on around the world, and there's a lot of tension in the States as well. And so we've gone from this place where things seem that there might be a glimpse of things getting better to a kind of place where people are a bit more disrupted and a bit more anxious, and things are more difficult and more tense between people. But it was still this kind of dreams and visions idea that God's Spirit comes into our hearts to give dreams and visions. That was I was working with when I was thinking about Pentecost. And I want to read a bit from Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. I'm actually going to read the first 4 bits of it, the sort of little mini paragraphs, because it's quite clear what he's saying, and he's talking about what it is to have a dream and a vision. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the colour of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. So that's Martin Luther King speaking about his dream and his vision that he believes that God has given him. But this is the challenge for us as Christians at the moment. What is the dream? What are the visions? What prophecy do we need to be doing at the moment? Now, a lot of people want me to prophesy at the moment. They want me to say, when are we going to be back in church? But prophecy isn't really about that. Prophecy is about speaking God's word, God's truth into a situation. That's what prophecy is, speaking God's truth into a situation. And we are all called to do that. And God's Spirit dwells within us. That's what Pentecost is about. God in us helps with this transformation of our hearts, so that whilst in Isaiah it talks about, Isaiah says, my thoughts are not your thoughts, nor neither are your ways my ways, says the Lord. But with Pentecost and with God dwelling in us, being in us and transforming us, our dreams become more like God's dreams. Our vision becomes more like God's vision. Our prophecies speak God's words into the situation. And at the moment, there's a lot of situation to speak into, locally, nationally, internationally. We need to be hearing God's words and speaking them into these difficult situations. Day by day, we need to be speaking God's truth, and we need to be dreaming God's dream. We need to pray that God's Spirit will bring that into our hearts. And I wanted to finish by reading a whole book. I know, a whole book. This is one of my favourite books. It's called God's Dream, and it's co-written by Desmond Tutu and Douglas Carlton Abrams. And a long time ago, I went to see Desmond Tutu in in St Albans Abbey, and it was really, really inspirational, and it was transformative for me, and it was great. I'll tell you about that. Sometime when you see me, stop me and go, Janet, tell me about going to see Desmond Tutu, and I'll tell you the whole story. But this is the book, the God's Dream book, so listen as I read. Dear child of God, what do you dream about in your loveliest of dreams? Do you dream about flying high or rainbows reaching across the sky? Do you dream about being free to do what your heart desires, or about being treated like a full person, no matter how young you might be? Do you know what God dreams about? If you close your eyes and look with your heart, I am sure, dear child, that you will find out. God dreams about people sharing. God dreams about people caring. God dreams that we reach out and hold one another's hands and play one another's games and laugh with one another's hearts. But God does not force us to be friends or to love one another. Dear child of God, it does happen that we get angry and hurt one another. Soon we start to feel sad and so very alone. Sometimes we cry and God cries with us. But when we say we're sorry and forgive one another, we wipe away our tears and God's tears too. Each of us carries a piece of God's heart within us, and when we love one another, the pieces of God's heart are made whole. God dreams that every one of us will see that we are all brothers and sisters, yes, even you and me, even if we have different mummies and daddies or live in different faraway lands. Even if we speak different languages or have different ways of talking to God, even if we have different eyes or different skin, even if you are taller than I am, even if your nose is little and mine is large. Dear child of God, do you know how to make God's dream come true? It is really quite easy as sharing, loving, caring, as easy as holding, playing, laughing, as easy as knowing we are family because we are all God's children. Will you help God's dream come true? Let me tell you a secret. God smiles like a rainbow when you do. And this is the last page of the book. So that's my prayer for us this Pentecost, that we will allow God's Spirit within us to help us dream God's dream here in this present situation. In the last days, God says, I will pour out my Spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your young men will see visions. Your old men will dream dreams. Amen. See you all soon.